Alright, hello Algebra 1. We are moving on. We are going to look at graphing quadratics that are in the vertex form. So we're going to start on this side of our notes. So we'll do standard form in our next video. So vertex form, here's your formula for it. We've got a, and then parentheses, we have x minus h. We are taking that to the second power. And then plus k. Okay, so that's our formula for vertex form. Kind of the purpose is that it's really easy to find the vertex. So easy to find vertex. Alright, so with that being said, our vertex is just hk. Okay, that's our vertex. We can see that we could get our h from our formula. Our h is here, and our k is here. Okay, the signs do matter, but we'll talk more about that in a little bit. So that's the first part of our notes. Let's go to our second part. So we have the axis of symmetry, and that's just x equals h. Okay, that's where you could fold it across. Next thing, if a, which is the first letter, the first number in that formula, if it is greater than 0, so that means it opens up. So opens up. So that means your graph kind of looks like this. It's a happy face. Okay. If it is not greater than 0, that means it opens down. And as you can imagine, that's going to be a sad face. Okay, it opens down. So that's if a is less than 1. Next thing we're talking about, if the a is greater than 1, that means it's being stretched. It is going to stretch on your graph. So examples, if your a is like 2 or 3, -5, -6, that's saying it's going to be a wider parabola. And then if a is not greater than 1, that means it's going to condense or shrink. I'll put condense here. So examples are like if you have 1/2, or if you have -1/3, 0.9, you get a decimal, it's going to be a skinnier radical. Okay, and keep in mind, for both of those, it's the absolute value, so the sign isn't taken into effect. Okay, it is just the size of the number. All right, let's go ahead and jump on to our first example. So the first thing I'm going to do is look for my vertex. Well, this is just our basic example. We can see that it doesn't have an h and it doesn't have a k. So our vertex is just going to be 0, 0. So what that means is my middle number in my chart, I'm going to go ahead and put 0, 0, because that's a point. And my axis of symmetry is just going to be x equals 0. Okay, so that is right along this line, my axis of symmetry. And my first point, my vertex, right there. So the next thing I'm going to do is kind of fill out the chart, and we're going to go from there. So we're going to go -1, go down to -2, then we'll have up to, so 1 and 2. Your next goal is to find out our y values, and that's just by plugging in the x values into the original equation. So for the first one, we have y equals -2 squared. Well, that's going to give us 4. Okay, well then we have -1 squared. That's going to get us 1. We already have our vertex. We have 1 squared. Well, that'll get us 1. And we have 2 squared. That'll get us 4. Okay, so all I'm doing is plugging it into my original. Feel free to use a calculator on that part, so you don't have to waste too much time on it. So what we're going to do now is use the numbers from this chart to find more points and to graph these points. So our first one, we have -2, so that's back 2 and up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right there. Then we have -1, up 1, 0, 0, which we already graphed. We have 1, 1, which is right here, and we've got 2, 4. So that is here. And as you can see, with our axis of symmetry, we could definitely fold that along that line and see that our points will overlap. So the last thing I'm going to do is connect my dots. Make sure you put those arrows at the end, and that is all. Okay, so that's example number 1. We found our vertex, found our axis of symmetry, we plugged in numbers to get other points, and then we graphed it. Let's go ahead and move on to example number 2. So remember, we've got our h and we've got our k. So we have -2 and +2. So our vertex here will be 2, 2. Because remember, in our formula, which is a x minus h to the second plus k. Okay, so because this h is already a negative, that means we're going to keep it a positive there because it has to. We're just looking at that number. But keep in mind, if that was a +2, then we'd have a -2 as our vertex, which I'm sure we'll see an example like that here shortly. So we have our vertex as 2, 2. Next thing we're doing is our axis of symmetry. So remember, that's just x equals 2. Okay, that's given from our vertex. And then let's start filling out that chart. So remember, our vertex goes in the middle point. So we have 2 and 2 here. So we're going to go down to 1 and 0 and up to 3 and 4. So the next thing that we're doing is plugging in those numbers to find our y. So we got y equals 0 minus 2 squared plus 2. Okay, you'll plug that in your calculator, or you can do it in your head, and you'll see that it's going to get you 6. So we'll have 6 here. Then we plug in 1. We square it, plus 2. That's going to give you 3. Then we're going to do it again with 3. Square it, plus 2. And that's going to give you 3. And then we're going to do it again with 4. And that's going to give you 6. Okay, so we have all of our points. First thing I'm going to do is graph my axis of symmetry. So we've got at 2. That is here. There we go. Next thing I'm doing is my vertex, which is at 2, 2. Let's see, that's about here. Next thing I'm doing is 1, 3. Then I've got 0, 6, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A little bit off the chart, but we could still got it. And then we got 3, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then we got 4, 6, so back up here. Once again, you can see that it will fold along that axis of symmetry. And your last thing, just connect those dots. Perfect. All right, let's go on to example number 3. So let's see what we're doing. We're looking for our vertex. So we've got a +1 as our h. So that means that our vertex will have a -1. Because remember our formula, ax minus h plus k. Okay, so because it's a plus, it means we have to put a -1. And then we've got 4, -4. Because it's a plus k, so since that's a minus k here, we'll put -4. And then our axis of symmetry is x equals -1. So that means we're going to put our point in the middle. We've got -1, -4. We're going to go ahead and fill in the rest of those numbers. So we got -2, -3, and we've got 0, 1. So you guys are getting to the point you're going to plug in those numbers, but I'm going to go ahead and just give those to you just to save some time. And as I want you guys to see is these two match, these two match. You will find that pattern, so make sure you're doing it correctly. All right, so the first thing we'll do is graph our axis of symmetry. So that's at -1. So that's right here. There's our axis of symmetry. Next thing we'll do is our vertex. So our vertex point is at -1, -4. So that is right here. Next thing we'll do is do -3, -4. So let's see. Or -3, 4, excuse me. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Up here. And then we've got 2, negative 2, negative 2, negative 2, 1, 2, down 2. Perfect. Gets you right there. We've got 0, negative 2. It's over here. And we've got 1, 4. All right there. So go ahead and connect those dots. Perfect. Okay, what I want you guys to do is pause this video, do example number 4 by yourself, and then we will check it together. Alright, so you should be checking your answer for this one. You can see that your vertex is negative 2, 5, because our h is a plus, meaning that that value is a negative number. Our axis of symmetry is just that number, negative 2, so x equals negative 2. And that's where I drew my yellow line. And I put my middle point for my vertex right here. Next thing you'll do is take 2 down and 2 up, so it's negative 3, negative 4, and then negative 1 and 0. You can see that all my work for these problems are down here. Keep in mind you can use a calculator to help you out. So you take your x and y values, you graph those points on this graph, and you can see that it is facing down. So as we talked about at the beginning, if it's a negative a, that means it's going to be a sad face, which it is. So it's a good way to check. So we have a sad face. I know that our negative 7 kind of goes off our graph, but that's okay. We guesstimated it. And that is all for today. We graphed in vertex form. So we're going to go ahead and check the vertex off, but tomorrow we'll be doing standard form. Okay, if you have any questions, please let us know. Adios.